Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Then the first item on the agenda is correspondence and announcements. And I don't really have any, but I believe you might have some recognitions.
Yeah, I'd first like to announce in the board, I believe I have received an email earlier about an event happening this Sunday, sponsored by the Urban League, the 30th Annual Urban League Martin Luther King Outstanding Young Person Breakfast. And so if you are interested in attending, you have information, and certainly would encourage you to do so if you're able. And I do believe...
Nice event.
Yep. And then along with that, I believe our principals have some recognitions that they would like to announce.
Sure.
We had one teacher, Erin Gelhausen, who received a donor's choice grant, which she was able to get 2 iPads, and she was able to, I think, secure that in 1 month. So
wow.
That was
Nice.
great. And then just a little update. A few of us who are up here tonight will be presenting. So Emily and then Jessica Wells is not here. Krista and myself will be presenting next week at the School Board Convention. 4K&K Critical Foundations to School Success.
Very nice.
When is that? Do you know when that is?
It is on the 23rd at 1:45.
I don't want to miss
Is that Thursday?
Yes. And then speaking of the convention, we also have another presenter. Jared will be presenting, if you'd like to talk about what you'll be doing.
Yes, on Thursday I will be presenting with PMA Forecast 5. We are going to be presenting a business manager superintendent look at their new analytical approach to things, something that we'll be rolling out to you guys as a board to show you some of the different reports that we can do when we talk about comparabilities and stuff like that. So we're going to take such the approach that the private sector uses for doing comparables and really taking the state data and showing what schools can use with that.
Nice. And what time is that one?
That's at 10:15 on Thursday.
Okay.
Will we be blessed with these presentations for us?
But not the Taylor Prairie one probably, but that one.
The PMA
not
one.
really?
I'm working with Mineral Point Superintendent and then PMA out of Chicago.
Okay, so if you want to see it, you have to see it at the convention. Okay.
I'll video it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
We'll YouTube it.
That's right. I forgot you can't. Yeah. Okay. Others.
Don't have any awards and presentations. Just a reminder, the show choir extravaganza will be Saturday, February 15th, when we host the schools coming in. And we have even a few more enrolled this year, so it's I don't know how many schools are coming in, but it'll be a big deal if you have a chance to go out. It's very nice.
Okay. Anyone else have anything? Okay, then we will move on to the administrative reports, and the first report is principal's report, and Connie is here with your staff, some of your staff.
Sure.
I'll let you.
Well, thanks for having us here tonight. What we're going to do is try to do a presentation in 30 minutes. I think each of them said we could speak for 30 minutes ourselves. I said we can't. But we want to just kind of show you a very kind of quick snippet of how we've connected our PDSA work to some in-house coaching that we've created this year. And really, our PDSA plans, I'm going to kind of go through this beginning piece fairly quickly. But we have mainly 2 plans. One looks at differentiation, and the strategies are data-driven instruction, which is DDI, and then Dylan Williams worked the embedded formative assessment. And then we also have the second plan on reducing equity gaps, which looks at PBIS and culture responsive practices. And with those plans, our teachers are constantly looking at data and looking at where our kids are going to be. As you know, we had to create baseline data. It was back in 2011, and we project where we really would like our students to be by 2013. So this one is looking at the Dibbles composite and really hoping that we can have our kids scoring in the high, close to 90% in the different grade levels. And as you can see, we've made progress since the spring of 2011. We also have math data, and we're just kind of looking at the Ames web is the blue line at the bottom, and that's where the 50th percentile is for kind of the kids all outside of our district and all the kids being tested. And the colored lines are where we have been. So we're doing really well, which is nice to see. And and that's first grade. And the reason that I'm showing you that data is the data just doesn't change by doing things. The data changes by connecting what we're doing in the classrooms with instruction and making sure that we're giving teachers the right tools. And the right tools might be nice pieces of equipment, but if we aren't really working on strategies to facilitate that and having opportunities where people are working with each other, it might not change. So they've done some really great work, and they're each going to talk a little bit about it.
I'm Caroline Hobway, and I'm the reading teacher at Taylor Prairie. And to start out, we do assessments at the beginning of the year, so in September, again in January, and again in May. And we do the map testing and also DIBELS. And I just read along the kindergarten and the first grade DIBELS assessment books, so you can have an idea of what DIBELS looks like. One of them test around. So we give the assessments, and once the assessments are all tabulated, our school improvement team reviews the data of the assessments and classroom teacher data, and we each month also meet and look at taxonomy data. From that data, we create we form reading support groups, which we call our flex groups, and then the educational assistants, my supervision, and we provide the small group interventions. And those small groups could be anywhere from 1 to 5 students typically. They're called flex groups, and the flex groups meet daily for about 30 minutes using research-based interventions such as Voyager, sound processors, PALS, and the like. Our educational assistants and I also provide small group reading support in the core reading block, and that's 30 minutes every day. With that, every week I meet with the educational assistants. We work on coaching, and we work on the DIBELS assessment coaching, making sure that we're assessing using the instrument and with fidelity. We also review the progress monitoring data that I collect every week so that the educational assistants can see that how their students are growing in the group that they're instructing. We talk about academic and behavior coaching for students in groups, so we might have some students that are having the same type of academic or behavior issues or something that the EAs may need help with, so I can give support with that. We also work on training on the research-based interventions that they use in the reading groups for the students that need that extra support. We work on Kathleen Dawson's strategies for the DEI, which is a connection to our own the teacher growth workshops that we have been to. So I extend that out to the EA, so they also are using the same strategies that the teachers are. And we do the same thing with the Dylan Williams formative assessment, so that they're also trained in that and can do some formative assessment on their own. Finally, I have a PowerPoint that I created, which covers the basic 5 literacy ideas of phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocab, and comprehension. So I also instruct and coach in those 5 big areas. The last thing that's a big part of what I do as far as the coaching is I observe the EAs as they are presenting a small group, making sure that they are following the fidelity of the intervention and the core curriculum. I also observe them giving DIBELS assessment to make sure that the assessment is given the correct way. And then I meet with each EA one-on-one and we review the strengths of their teaching and their assessments and also some target areas that they could work on.
Ooh. Did this another day too.
It's black on black.
But it actually showed up, I have a copy.
There are people.
then this very warm training model with early learning, early childhood. At least some of the core components of that idea. So, and just the
whether it's recommended books, recommended apps for parent or caregivers, iPads or tablets, and also just very briefly, just some things to be focusing on with their child. In addition, I am a member of the school improvement team and the continuous improvement team that sit in the kids committees, and I make sure that I am
and really differentiate our work pretty much based on math and other data, but mostly math. So why coach in the first place? I was at Dane County New Teacher training, and I found this research really interesting, that if you attend a training where you're just it's a sit and get kind of presentation, or even a training where maybe they're doing some modeling, or maybe you're also allowed to practice with adults and get some low-risk feedback, the chances of you going back to your workplace and actually applying that are like 10 to 15% of workplace application. When you involve coaching, on-the-job coaching, that workplace application bumps up to 80, and now more recent studies even say 90% workplace application. So I think coaching is really a good investment, and we're seeing positive results. There was another study, too, that I thought was interesting, but this was a long time ago, 96. But 1996, surgeons reduced their workload and watched one another, and it equated to increased survival rate by 25%. So lots of good studies about coaching. So why me? I was a third grade teacher. Let's see, I had some experience with math and DDI in third grade. It's been around longer in third grade. And then I came down to kindergarten and with kindergarten, MAP and DDI is rather new. So I could take what I learned at third grade and kind of bring it down to the primary level. That work really clicked with me. I had been struggling to use MAP in the classroom before DDI came along for a number of years. So when Kathleen came and presented, it was just pretty awesome. Connie gives me release time about every other week, and so I get the same sub in my classroom, and I let teachers know what I can do to help them through beginning of the year in services, through emails. They see a lot that their peers are doing, and that kind of helps other people on board. The benefits to me coaching is that I'm credible because, you know, I walk the talk, I'm in the building, I'm doing it. I wouldn't ask people to do something that I haven't already tried. The challenges, though, for me being a full-time teacher plus coach is that it takes a lot of personal time planning for a sub and planning for upcoming sessions. And I think with any coach, it's difficult to develop buy-in among staff. Now, the fact that it's year 2 for me is helpful because people remember what we did year 1 and want that again. People are seeing others benefit from what we do together. And then another way that I've tried to develop buy-in this year is by using the Jim Knight model. Jim Knight wrote a book called Instructional Coaching, and Connie gave me articles from Jim Knight and kind of got me interested. So I read the book, and what I like about him is that he really advocates for you watch me, I watch you. So I'm trying to put myself out there and say, can I model a DDI lesson in your classroom? And maybe you can watch me, see what you like and don't like and what questions you have, and that kind of breaks down those to let me do. It's just, you know, when you go to a presentation, you're all getting the same thing, where I can really differentiate based on what people need. People are at all different places with DDI, so we can really hone in on the needs of teachers through coaching. And one thing I use is, you can go to the next thing. One thing I use is called the collaborative log, and this is from the New Teacher Project, but also from Jim Knight's work. It's just a guide that I use to help kind of lead my questions with teachers, and we talk about teachers' current realities. This is on a Google Doc, so this was just with one teacher. Her comments were in red, and but we talk about current realities, students' current realities, what they think about their professional development so far. Then we identify a focus, and then we just go through next steps and future meeting dates. And basically, you can see this teacher started in November, and we're going through. Actually, I observe her again at the end of January. So this spans a couple of months. You know, you can see this working with one teacher, even probably school year over the course of several school years. So there's a lot we can do together. And then DDI coaching ties nicely to the work that our DDI CLT team is doing. So CLT is our collaborative learning team. It's our school-wide learning teams. Connie gives us a generous amount of work time during staff meetings. So how we kind of plan our work is through staff surveys. And our PDSA goals, of course, but those kind of tie to the surveys. So we find out what are the needs of our staff, and then that way our DDI team can work on some of those needs. So an example of that, right now we're working on these, they're called personal training binders. And so if MAP is broken down into 4 strands, a student has a low, so reading, if you have 4 strands in reading, one of those is going to be lower than the rest. So as a teacher, we really try to focus on that one and bump that up, because we know that bumping that up, it'll boost their overall reading ability or math ability. So we have these binders kind of handy, so you can say, okay, this student needs some help with comprehension. I can go to this binder and grab games, activities, worksheets, and they're leveled, and I know that this will meet the needs of my students in a very quick, low prep kind of way. So another thing that we do is present at staff meetings. We just give quick little trainings. Like one component of MAP, even though there's those formal checks in MAP, like fall, winter, spring, there's also skills checks, which are like formative assessments in between. And people just haven't been using them a lot, and we haven't had a lot of training on them. We got one bit of training that was kind of short, so we just tried to remind people that, hey, this is out there, and then that also ties to my coaching too, because I can go back and say, remember these skills checks, I can help you use that in your work. So, and then I just mentioned a couple other strategies that we're working on as a DDI team. And then, so those are, that's that school-wide team. And then we also have our PLC team, and that's our grade level team, basically. So we have a representative from each CLT on our PLC. And I want to thank you, though, for giving us the extra time this year to have for our collaboration time. We really appreciated that time to collaborate. We were able to share our CLT work in our grade level teams. We're able to do a lot of data analysis. Andrew gave us a beautiful sheet that we use, that a nice template, not a sheet, but it's all online. And so we can really identify targets and strengths and discuss strategies and interventions and do a lot of planning. So I think, with the combined work of coaching and CLTs, PLCs, we're really moving forward. I know, this is a lot of acronyms. Yes.
That's right.
I'm Ellie Squire, I'm a kindergarten teacher also, and this year I have a new role as a technology coach or a technology integrator. And this isn't directly tied to our PDSAs, but it helps a lot with differentiation if staff know how to use the technology that's available to them. And we've talked about how people need to know how to use the tools that they're given in training. And my role this year has been to help people use the physical tools that we have in our classrooms. We all have smart boards, and now we all have the teacher iPads and the iPad cart. And so we have that technology available, but without the right training, we don't maximize the potential of any of those things. So when I came to this district last year, and I had a lot of smartboard training, and I also have been working on my PDP to renew my license about technology. And as I got to know the school and as I got to know the district and I found out we were getting iPads, I just saw a need for more training for staff and more ideas for staff for how to apply the tools that we have in their classrooms. So I approached Connie and Andrew and Bill about it, and they were enthusiastic, and they worked together. Between Connie and Bill, they've given me 10 release days for coaching this school year, since it is our pilot year, and it worked out pretty well since I'm going on maternity leave soon. And so I have taken those days in full days or half days. It just depends on how much I have scheduled with teachers on given days. So during that time, interested teachers work with me to integrate their smart boards into their classroom, into their instruction, and then also the iPads that we have. I surveyed all the teachers, and I started with teachers who said, yes, I'm definitely interested in doing this. And as the year has gone on, a few more people have joined in and taken an interest in what we're doing also. I've also presented monthly at the staff meetings, and I held one large group training this year to try it out on using QR codes, which that's what you have in front of you. It's a quick response code. And I created the green document that you have. Different uses for the iPads based on a lot of high quality free apps that I found this year, but also some paid apps that I think were worth the cost. Teachers especially wanted to know how they could use their one iPad that they have in their room all the time, but then additionally, what could they do with their iPads if they have the whole set for their whole class? What can they do if they have just 5 or 6 for a center? And so I've been working on that. I also had the chance to visit schools in Madison and Verona, and I observed in one-to-one iPad classrooms in primary grades, in a second grade in Verona, and in a kindergarten in Madison. And I've had a chance to talk and meet with their technology integrators in their districts. So just to kind of give you an idea of what this is, on your iPad, we weren't sure if you all had the same app, but it looks like this. It's a scan app. It's a little red box. If you don't have it, I'll show you what it does. But basically, these QR codes can be linked to any web address. So if I create a document, like in my Google Drive, I can get a unique web address for that, and then my students can scan these with their iPads. And this is a quick and easy way for me to differentiate. This is for a center I'm doing next week with CBC Words. The red code is going to be for most of my students who are ready to try to write all 3 sounds in a word. The blue code I may give to a few other students who I want to specifically focus on the middle vowel sound. So what they would do is they just hold their iPad up and then they scan, it's hard to do it like this, they scan the code and then they can see the picture, and I want them to write the word bus for this one. But if it was one of my students that will be scanning the blue code, when they scan it, they would see, oops, scan that one. they would see the same picture, but this time, instead of having to write all 3 sounds, it gives them the first and the last sound, and they just have the middle sound. So it's a quick, easy way for me to provide a really engaging experience for kids that I can differentiate quickly for the students in my class. And the difference between a blue and a red code certainly isn't embarrassing to anyone. They're just scanning different codes, and later we might switch and different kids would scan the blue code and the red code.
Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about PBIS, which is Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. And I am the internal coach for PBIS at Taylor Prairie, DCOF, one of the school psychs, sorry. And the purpose of PBIS is really to create a safe, supportive learning environment that uses a common language to promote positive behavior in all students. So where it says Tier 1 at the top, what that means is right now we're currently focusing on Tier 1, which is all students at the universal level. We are starting to kind of work into Tier 2, which is looking at a smaller group of students that may be showing data that indicates that they need more support. But today I'm going to focus on the Tier 1 aspect. The goal is really to maximize academic engagement and achievement for all of our students with the Tier 1 level. And a big piece of PBIS is that we have 3 behavior expectations at Taylor Prairie, and those are be safe, be respectful, and be responsible. We have a CLT work team of about 16 staff members, and part of my coaching role is to really coordinate and facilitate those meetings and the work that's done within the CLT. We meet during that time at the end of our staff meetings, and we also have a lot of time during in-service days to do a lot of this work. 16 staff members is a lot, so we're split up into subgroups that really focus on different core areas of the PBIS framework. So some of the areas I'm just going to describe kind of briefly that we focus on. One big aspect is our back to school night. And the students and parents watched short demonstrations in some of the key environments in our school on that back-to-school night to learn the positive behavior expectations we have in each one of those areas before ever coming to Taylor Prairie. I'm going to pass around, I have some brochures, and you'll see on the back side, well, kind of when you open it up, there is what we call the behavior matrix. It outlines the 3 big areas of being safe, respectful, and responsible on the side. And then across the top, it outlines the different environments of the school. So like the bathroom, hallways, classroom, playground. And if you use the grid, you can actually look at what are we teaching the kids in those environments to show those positive behaviors. And so, for example, being safe in the bathroom would be walking in and out safely and keeping your hands and your feet to yourself. So those are the positive behavior expectations that we focus on for the bathroom. And of course, they're different in many of the locations, but many of them overlap as well. So I'll pass these around. There's not enough for everyone, but you can kind of share with a neighbor. And so at the beginning of the year, we really want to practice and model those behaviors for kids and have them practice it, and we want to reinforce those positive behaviors. So we really try to kind of front load the reinforcement, and we have little Eagle Eye awards that when you catch a student showing one of the positive behaviors from the behavior matrix, we try to acknowledge them very specifically, like I noticed you were showing walking feet, and give them the Eagle Eye Award. And each class has a goal number that they've set as a class that they're trying to earn for each month. So kind of getting, sorry, I might have gotten off a little bit from our PowerPoint. So one other thing we do throughout the year to focus on the positive behaviors and reteaching them is something called Teach Shoes. And those are done through the morning announcements. They're either read aloud, and we also have some of them on the TV announcements on Fridays. One of the other acknowledgement systems that we have for students is called Exceptional Eaglets, and that's what the pictures you see are on the screen. Every month, 2 to 3 students per class are nominated based on positive behaviors, and throughout the year, all students will be nominated one time as an Exceptional Eaglet. and they are recognized at our monthly school assembly, which is really a celebration of everything that they've been doing with those positive behaviors. They also have a certificate that's placed on the wall for them to see in the cafeteria. And then their pictures in the newsletter, and a note goes home to parents to recognize them.
That was a big month in my house last year.
So again, I already talked about the Eagle Eye tickets, but this really is our immediate high frequency reinforcer that we use. So looking at the data, which really drives what we do with PBIS, what our focus areas are, what we have is every fall a self-assessment survey that we complete. And if you look at this, this is longitudinal data. So April 2011, that data is actually prior to PBIS being implemented in the school. So that's when the team was going through training. And the school completed that to see where are we now versus where are we after implementation. The goal is for 80% fidelity. So if you look at October 2013, you'll see that all areas are above 80% fidelity. So that's really great. That means that we really are putting that framework into place and doing it with fidelity. So now I'm just going to talk about the risk ratio gap. And this is the gap that we look at for office discipline referrals. So ideally, we want the risk ratios to be at or below 1.0. So we want the risk ratio gap, that's the difference from the ideal. And ideally, you want that to be at or below 0. So when we look at the data, this is from the PDSA, our goals for June 2014 are the green towards the right side, and then the red is our current status. So you'll see that all four of the gaps are significantly below the goal for June 2014 currently, which is great. And 3 of the 4 gaps are actually below 0. And like I said, under 0 is ideal. So that's good. And then this last chart looks at our behavior referral data. And the first one, we look at office discipline referrals, and those are our major referrals. And the first box there says percent of students with 0 to 1 referrals. And that's 99% of our students have 0 to 1 referrals. Percent of students with 2 to 5, we have 2 students that fall into that category, so 0.5%. And then percent of students with 6+ referrals, and we have 2 students again that fall into that category. And this is the data that we like to use to really drive, is tier 1, is that showing, the PBIS, is that showing what we want it to show? Are the students able to demonstrate those positive behaviors? And then we delve into this a bit deeper when we're looking at tier 2 and looking at the students that might need additional support.
So kind of with all that, we've talked and said, well, what have we learned? And I think everyone has felt that there are benefits to the coaching. Some of it has been, you're connecting the learning to practice. Definitely, we want to see the student achievement increase, and we want to see behaviors decrease. There's an immediate application of strategies, and then it really is supporting our short-term and long-term goals that we have district and school-wide. Definitely there are challenges with the models that we're doing, and we really feel that they're not sustainable. Having my teachers leave the classroom for the amount of time that they do and still, be expected to teach and coach is pretty challenging. I mean, they're wonderful, and someday if they ever leave, I'm going to be very sad. But it's not a sustainable program. We really feel like some standalone coaching would be good. Some things like what Ann is doing works pretty well when that's really your main focus and kind of what you can do. So they have really said time is essential. You have to provide feedback and the demonstrations. Certainly there's time for gathering the resources and having people buy in, but sustainability for us is really kind of our biggest concern, that this is wonderful, but can we really continue doing it? That's
Okay. Well, thank you. Questions? Comments? Dean and then Peter.
My questions were, when I've heard all these good things, what do you need to sustain it? It seems to me time is a factor.
time is a factor.
And Tell us, where the,
For some of the coaching positions, I would see as a position that stands alone by itself. An instructional coach would be very beneficial, where someone could implement the DEI strategies and some of the things that are coming through with the educator effectiveness, with the SLOs and all of that that's coming. I think we could really embed someone to do a lot of that together, and always be kind of looking at the data. Ellie, we talked a little bit about technology, and some of Ellie's thoughts were, some of it could maybe be done after hours, but there'd have to be some kind of give and take, or to look at something district-wide, where all schools would benefit from a technology integrator.
so what,
People that I was, oh, I'm sorry. The people I have met with in Madison and Monona are K-12 technology integrators. There's a woman whose name is Shelley Black who works in Madison. Her job is to integrate iPads for the entire district. So she runs training, she runs professional learning groups, she's available to teachers to coach them in classrooms, and she's working across the district. It's not just in one school.
well, it seems that is how much is time a factor? How much are people, this personnel factor, and how much of it is special expertise, which may not be shared by everyone?
It's true. I mean, I think it really does take, as Emily was kind of saying in her presentation, when you can really walk the talk, that there's a credibility. Just hiring somebody from the outside to come do it isn't necessarily going to be the best model. Someone that knows it and does it and lives it and breathes it and can do it, I think is probably the best person to do that. But I don't feel that they can be a full-time teacher and even a coach for 20 or 25 days. You know, we are fortunate. We've had kindergarten teachers who retired who can come back and take their place, and we've been able to do that. That's not going to be forever.
How skilled are new teachers coming in?
I think the skills vary. Technology I see pretty high with new teachers, but some of the DDI stuff, even teachers who use MAP in another district have no clue what DDI is. They haven't used it. They have probably very.
That's what I've really found with it, especially those beginning of the year in services on MAP and DEI. And even Kelsey can attest to this because she was at one, but just that, yes, outside districts may use MAP, but maybe have just used it as a reporting tool for parents, but haven't integrated it the way that we do. So,
I have
there's a
two more.
record.
How much preparation did it take in your experience for teachers to be able to collect data, use data, and then?
For me?
Yeah, in your.
That has been a process to me that has been really evolving over time. Teachers first start out with looking at data like this. This is my classroom, I'm not going to share. To where you have to build that environment of is our building, is our kids, and that takes years to do that. From there you go to, okay, let's talk among our team. Let's look at the data. Data is numbers. Now look at who are the people. Because when you start talking people and children, it's a whole different ballgame. If you have a list of names of kids that aren't making that cut, you better be doing something.
But you're also all of you have talked about going from an I to a we.
We do.
Kind of
And
thing.
they do. They meet as a team, and their data is on a sheet. They talk, they share ideas, they have strategies, they have goals, and they are always bumping and moving those kids along. But that takes time too. And what Emily was talking about was that collaboration time when we modified their schedules this year and they have all common planning time and their needs. And that has been huge.
It's been so powerful. Even today we saw a teacher who had excellent growth from fall too. We just got our winter data. I mean, it was outstanding. And we are able to say, what do you think? What led to this? And she could, you never know, but it's just the perfect storm for her. Like she could name this and this and this, and we're all learning from that. But having that time to even have those discussions, whereas in years past we'd have to go field trip, you know, this day is the 100th day of school, Valentine's Day, done. Because you don't have the time to have those rich discussions. So this year has been really nice for that.
Thank you.
Peter?
Dean covered some of the ground that I was going to. First of all, I want to say 7 years, this is the most informative, most significant teacher, school district, school presentation I've seen on the board. So thank you very much for this very presentation, very informative presentation. It does bring up a lot of questions about how we're going to arrange how we do business, how we structure how we do business in the district that supports this kind of education, this kind of model, right? We have a model, how do we look at what we do to support that? And I think that there's some important questions and important understanding to get from this work. And I don't want to go into it here, but it's a big discussion.
I would love to talk to anybody that would love to talk about it.
And maybe we'll do that.
Well, I'll go there just a little bit, just so you know, both Dean and Peter sit on our teacher compensation committee, and those are the discussions we're having before we even put a model together about, you know, a lot of things about time and how does that play in on, you know, in days and so on. So it ties right into the work we're doing that we can help support this. So we don't have the solutions yet, but we know what the problems are, and we're working on those solutions.
Well, and I think you mentioned the point, Emily, that teacher buy-in from your colleagues is huge for coaching to work. And so it's that balance of having a teacher who's actually teaching and using it, and as you said, can show that they're doing it and it works, as an example, versus a full-time instructional coach who's no longer in the classroom. And that was part of the idea of the Teacher Mentor Project, that the lead teacher mentor, after so many years, was required to go back to be a teacher again, because, speaking even from my own experience, once you're out of the classroom for a while, your memory of what it's really like day to day fades.
Exactly.
And that's a key thing. And I think, and then I also know, with just the nature of teaching and the egos involved and the whole, and the apprehensions, for a lot of reasons, having a coach that's trusted to come into your class, that's a whole sea change for us to be doing that. And the educator effectiveness system requires it kind of, so it's good timing in that sense to be doing some of this. But it is very impressive that, and I would agree with you, it's very impressive what you're doing. And so the trick is, how do you do it? Because I also know that, and as the children in the classroom, even though we're getting high quality subs in there right now, it isn't you, and it isn't you, and it's that's the other side of that as well. So it's a complicated thing to figure out. But Jeff?
Well, I agree with Susan. I think we got to balance if you have a full-time coach. Saying, well, maybe eventually saying that may be how it used to be, but it's not that way anymore because I don't think it's changed so much. But one thing I do want to, our building our kids, I hope we're pushing that through as a district overall. I think I'm not on the teacher compensation committee, but I hope that's something that is district-wide, that our building our kids is a very important philosophy of a district. And I think we have
it is something.
It's the first time I've actually heard that, so I hope that that's something that is accepted in our district, given, I don't know what the word is.
I really commend you for what you're doing. Again, I saw a program, it had to have been 3 or 4 years ago at WSB, and I think I talked to you about it, Connie. Tom Howe came to us 15 years ago plus and said, I've been inviting teachers into my classroom to look at what I do and say, tell me what I can do better. And nobody would come. So I went to them and I said, can I come watch you so I can learn to be better? And they said, well, I'm not comfortable with that either. And the fact is, you're bridging that using systems and processes, and I think that's huge. And again, Andrew can tell you, I've been sitting on that as a ex officio board member with the Teacher Mentoring Project, and you've seen the difference. 4 years ago, that project was on the budget cuts. It isn't there. It hasn't been there. Understanding that we may still have to make major budget cuts or go to referendum, the fact is, at least right now, people are very clearly seeing the advantage to the coaching process and collaborative coaching. And in that 8-step process that I saw at WSB, it was a monthly meeting. All the teachers in the building were in there, and they put their kids up, and it wasn't a face. It was A, B, C, D. It was these kids in the class, but each one was an individual. And the superintendent was in those meetings once a month in every building. And what you were looking for was growth. And if you didn't see growth, 4 teachers were coming over to the teacher saying, what can I do to help, and how can I support you? And that's what you're building. And it started with the culture that Connie's building in the data material, and then that you're using it and finding it to support each other collaboratively, and that's huge.
Anything else? Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, but I think that's, well, but it can't be a standing position. It's rotating. Yeah. And then next we have the principal report, Paul Brast with the high school graduation credit requirements for math and science.
Good evening.
Follow that up.
As most of you are probably aware, the upping of the math and science requirements by the state has been kicked around for a couple of years now. And so in high school principal circles anyway, it's been monitored pretty closely. And I know Badger Conference crew that I meet with the last couple of years have been watching it closely. And because we have most of our students already taking 3 years of math and science, it's not been real high on my radar. Some of my colleagues are in settings where they have a larger segment of students not taking it. It has been a very big concern to them when that requirement came through, how would they accommodate those students. However, it been talked about enough that felt like we probably should put something in place formally, even though it's just a formality, because it really doesn't have an impact on our offerings and things we're offering for our students and what they're taking. So this fall I talked to students about it, I talked to staff about it, just to make sure they're aware that that's what I was going to propose. And then early in December, I wrote a recommendation for Superintendent Olson, ran it by Dr. Rydell, and as you know, shortly after that, then it was formalized through the state that it was going to be a requirement. And so in my recommendation, I recommended that we phase in beginning with the incoming freshmen, and you're probably also aware the state requires that it starts with this year's freshmen. So my recommendation says for the graduating class of 2018, and the state actually requires it for the class of 17. So it'll be this year's freshmen. And again, won't have an impact on our programming other than just formalizing that. I did provide you some numbers so you could see how many of our students are taking 3 and 4 years of math and science, and it's always been a relatively small number of kids who aren't. 3 years, a few more of the 4 years. But in terms of the 3-year requirement, we're in really good shape. We don't anticipate having to offer any other classes. My recommendation would be for math simply just to have the requirement state, whether it's in the handbook or in formal board policy, up to you how that needs to be put in, that we just have the 3 years of math. As you know, kids enter math at different levels in the high school, and we have a 3-year sequence, and we have some programs in place to make sure kids get through at least that much. It won't be a problem. We have an ALEX program that's individualized for kids. It's a computer software program for kids who are struggling, for our kids that really need support by the time they're juniors, and we're confident that will get kids through that 3-credit situation. For science, I would recommend specific course sequence. As you know, we just have gone recently to the biology, chemistry, physics 3-year sequence, and that's what our science teachers embedded our career and college readiness standards in. And we have had good buy-in from our students and our community, and the vast majority of our kids are taking that sequence. We've had really good success with that, and so my recommendation would be that we specifically list that they need to take those 3 science credits for graduation, with the caveat being that we have a note in there that for students who may have case managers, however we word that, special ed / at-risk categories, that I can appoint staff to make appropriate modification accommodations for those students. There's very few of those. We can have a walkover science credit from a tech ed area, or have them take even a different science class if we feel like math skills are an issue for the physics. But we're confident we can make that work for the students.
Questions, Dean?
Paul, are all of the courses that you'll have in the math sequence, would they qualify for admission to the state systems, colleges? And if not, are they asterisked or noted that these will not qualify for Whitewater or UW-Madison or typically four-year colleges?
Yeah, that's outlined in our course handbook, and we go through that with parents and students right from the get-go when they come in as freshmen. So, you know, most of the universities want you to be through a geometry. Maury Smith is with us here tonight, talked about one of the math proposals. Maybe could answer that better than I could, but we do clearly designate what college requires a minimum to get into those Madison system and the other UW systems in our book. I believe it's through the algebra sequence for sure, most on advanced algebra. So we have relatively few students who don't get through an advanced algebra level, either as advanced algebra or algebra 2 or through FST. So very few of our students wouldn't qualify for that math, but we do clearly, and counselors, of course, work with kids as well to make sure their plans are in place.
So the counselors, the kids, and the parents know that math course XY will meet the graduation requirements
and college entrance.
But even though maybe UW-Madison might even have something different, do they or not?
I don't know if Madison's is different level, but our counselors do, and that's communicated out, yes.
Okay, so the parents and the kids are clearly informed, so they don't find out after the fact that they didn't do it.
Yeah, I do not have meetings with parents, but I didn't know. We make sure that's all up front.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, Susan?
Paul, I noticed on our present policy that basically what we say was math 2 credits, science 2 credits, so we could easily change that to the 3. Mm-hmm. We don't specify, so for instance, English is 4 credits. We don't say you have to take these courses in this sequence. My only concern, if we do something like that, would it be worthwhile considering adding language that said, except with principal approval? So let's say you have a kid for some reason that isn't in that sequence or wants to take very, very specialized stuff their junior and senior year, and so let's say they're going to take something other than physics. Maybe it's a special physics course at the university through youth options or something that we don't offer. I just wondered if you wanted to leave yourself leeway that allows you to consider a special request. So if we do that in the handbook saying, you know, any modification would be considered with principal, something like that would allow someone to come to you and say, under these circumstances, could we look at something different?
Yeah, I'd probably recommend that we, and I think Dan, Andrew, and I can look at that. My recommendation would be to put it in the handbook and just have the board policy support the handbook.
Yeah.
But I'm really more concerned about having the language really clear about students and parents who kind of looking to opt out for reasons other than the higher end, and having clear language about the students who really skills may be an issue, and would work with those situations individually, sure.
You're exactly right, because I was looking at it very focused from the other side. Yeah. From the Bill Ziegler who grabs your kid in the hallway and says, do you know you could be taking 2 sciences your senior year? And they go, no, I didn't know that. You know? So again, just,
I don't anticipate on the high end having those issues. We allow kids to double up, but certainly somebody who's accelerator going above and beyond, we make that work.
Okay.
And just as a clarity, the board will need to approve a revised policy, to reflect this. And as Dr. Bross said, and you saw the date of his memo was in December. This is something that was going to be a recommendation regardless of the statutory change. It just so happened that they made the change for us. But so yeah, we will. work with, Dr. Brost on that recommendation, and I agree, we'll put some flexibility in there to reference the sequence and so on.
And again, I wasn't thinking so
Yeah,
much of people opting out on the low end. I was thinking about allowing you to provide the growth.
Well, right now, the sequence for English and social studies, for example, is defined in the handbook, so that would be, I agree, that'd be the place to put it, and just put that, yeah. Dean?
Will the change of these requirements change the staffing pattern or resource needs?
No.
Because so few kids aren't taking math, yeah. That's a nice situation to be in. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Then the next item is superintendent report.
Okay, on my written report, you see I have 4 items, and so I won't spend much time on those. They're pretty self-explanatory. The first one, the communications plan. Doreen Debsky will be at our January 29th board meeting and share the draft of the communications plan. She's been working not only with myself, but our entire administrative team, and we're ready to report to the board on our work thus far. Very excited about what we've done. The school closings. Just wanted to clarify our situation with regard to our statutory requirements for hours of instruction, as well as procedurally what we're doing in district. As you're aware, we had to close for 2 days on the 8th and 9th due to the extreme cold. And so on your board docs, you do see a memo from Dr. Bedell, who keeps track of our hours of instruction, and you can see that we are well over the required hours. So with regard to that, there's no need to make up the days. That would be my recommendation that we don't. The teachers certainly adjust the curriculum to make sure we get through things, but I just want you to be aware that is a board decision. By taking no action, and I think that's been the practice, that we wouldn't unless we're required to. Should you feel that you'd like to have that discussion, then it's a matter of talking to Susan and myself about it, having it as a discussion item on the future agenda. And certainly if we have more closings in the future, we'll keep you updated on the hours, and we can talk about that. But at this point, recommend that we continue on with our current schedule. Third item, I just wanted to update you on the interview process for our Director of Human Resource position, and you'll see I have a memo outlining the timeline for the hiring process. We have completed initial interviews. We had a screening committee made up of board members, administrators, teachers, support staff, and we do have finalists that will be interviewed next week on the 20th, and my hope is to have a recommendation to the board at the January 29th meeting for the position. And lastly, update on the McKinnon Street project. Obviously, we're here this evening in our newly remodeled boardroom, and we do have a few loose ends to tie up with regard to the Phase 2 project. And so actually, I'm going to ask Jared if there's anything you'd like to share about some of the things that we are looking to wrap up here yet in the.
Sure. A couple of things we're getting to that, the small things, the things that seem to be, at the very end that you sometimes don't realize you need until you get everybody moved into their locations. In this room specifically, we'll be mounting permanent cameras, so we won't have the cords and the cameras in the back room. We'll also be finalizing placement of artwork and working with the schools to get student artwork, so there will be things on the walls. We will be continuing to update the furniture. We have some more furniture that will be coming in. And then obviously there are some other things that we'll be walking through, obviously adjusting HVAC to make sure that we get our temperatures, figuring out our secure doors, what time to open, what time to close. So those are the things that we have to get through. But Mark and his team has been very flexible and has worked with us very well, and McKinnon Street has been very helpful for the most part as well. So.
Okay. And actually, our facilities director, Mark Scullion, is here this evening as well. Anything you'd like to add to that, Mark, with regard to the project?
Sure. Glad it's almost done.
Somehow I thought that's what you were going to say. Yeah. There's been a lot of projects this year. I think it was a record. So, yeah.
I would
Thank
like
you.
Just, again, for the record, the leadership that Mark and Jared have both shown in this project. It has been, with the time constraints and so on, a very challenging project, but it is certainly well worth it, and it's turned out very well. And as we're wrapping up Phase 2, we've already begun discussions on Phase 3 of the project and meeting with folks from McKinstry, and we will have a proposal for the board to consider in February for the Phase 3 project to potentially be done in the upcoming summer. And so one of the things I just wanted to give you a heads up that we'll have basically a month for the board to consider that. We'll make sure you have that information well in advance of the meeting, and the McKinstry folks will be here as well to present. And we'll have discussion at the first, the committee of the whole meeting, and we will need to make a decision if we're going to do anything next summer by that second meeting in February. If we're not ready to make a decision, it will have to be put on hold for the following year. This year we ran into some time constraints that we don't want to go through again. And obviously the thing at the top of the list is the air conditioning at Cottage Grove School. And so we'll talk about some different options for that and and so on.
Thank you. Then the next item under board reports, the Teacher Compensation Committee report.
We have, I think, the final update of our goals and criteria that was out on board docs. It's been edited, reviewed several times now, and I think these stand as kind of our benchmarks for asking questions about our work and elements within the work. Clearly, we probably won't be able to achieve all, about 10 of them or so, but we're going to certainly try. The other thing is we do meet tomorrow night,
Yes.
and we're meeting in room 207, aren't we?
Actually, room 308, right across the hall.
Right across the hall,
Yeah.
okay. And at that time, we're going to have the first, the skeleton of the first framework of the career ladders, and our job is going to be to see whether there are 5 steps on the ladder, 4 or 3, or no steps. I think everybody on the committee is open to a lot of combinations. We want to make something that's usable and workable and complements our teachers and staff, I think, and meet our goals. We have a lot of data. I've had to expand my binder to the 4-inch binder. And, I'm going through it and highlighting items that I think are something that's not necessarily that I want, but necessarily might be questions or items that we throw out for everybody to consider. And I think that's probably going to be that type of thing. Cobbling this together will probably take up most time in the next couple of meetings anyway.
Questions about that? Okay.
And just an informational point, the information that the board or the committee will be looking at tomorrow night is now on board docs, and so it's all public information. So please, anyone that has an interest, it's there you can view, and those of you on the committee also received hard copies this evening as well.
All right. Then under discussion items, the first item is new high school course proposals.
What I'd like to do, you have the proposal in front of you, is I'll just give a very brief overview of the courses, and then tonight for math, folks, Maury Smith is here, Sarah Sang, who teaches the calculus course, and help with the proposal, and Nikki Haley, who's the department head. Jim Koski is here to answer questions about the computer science proposal, Jeff Otto for the tech ed, and Kelly Sullivan for the English. So if it's all right, as we go through those, if you have questions, I'll have them just join me and they can answer specifics. If the 4 courses, 2 are in the core areas, the calculus and the media course from Kelly, and 2 are electives, tech ed and computer science. We anticipate these to be staff neutral. The core area for sure, the students will make choices within those, and it's very unlikely that will have any impact. In the elective areas, typically kids will choose. We look at low enrollment and we try to give kids options, and those with real low enrollment we wouldn't offer. If we have a situation where kids took less study halls and chose to take those courses, we may have an addition of a 1/10 or a 2/10. I want to put it out there in staffing, but we're proposing it as staff neutral. That would be unlikely to happen. But I would work with district office if that's the case. I'd probably like to start with the tech ed course from Jeff, the microcontrolling course. This is a one semester course, and the language is way beyond me, but it's in Jeff's area with electronics, and they feel right now that they've got enough kids coming in with good skills and interest in this area that allows Jeff to expand and give kids an opportunity to get some additional experience in microcontrollers. And you can see the various elements that he listed and the different standards that he would look to cover in that course. And again, most of the equipment and items needed we have or could take care of in the current budget. And again, that would be in addition to our tech ed department, it would be a one semester half credit elective. Any questions or anything you'd like Jeff to help with, or I can try to help with?
Yeah, again, I'm really glad that we're moving into these areas where the kids, having sat through the doing the crane exercise, seeing kids understand that it's a thing that you can do. I guess, I'm old-fashioned in the way that I'd like the course name to tell me what it is. And I'm obviously totally out of it because I don't have a clue what that really means. So that would be the
Kids
only...
probably do.
I'm sure the kids do, but maybe their parents don't. So I'm just saying it's in technology and engineering. I don't know. If you think that's fine, but
I was going to ask how to pronounce it.
Good for you.
Love
I'm
to hear an
asking
explanation for the rationale.
The first title is mechatronics, right? Is that what the document you have? No.
And that's microcontrolling the...
Arduino.
Oh, okay.
The first title actually is.
Oh, thank you.
Microcontroller is the generic type of
Okay.
devices that was put together.
Arduino, is that how you...
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So
Okay.
maybe this isn't the real title.
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
But it might be good as a subtitle because you do want
I
to catch
agree.
their interest, I think. I mean, I
looking-
like the title. I thought
Actually, I Googled it, and I still wasn't sure what I was supposed to look at. Took me weird places. But that would be the only question I'd have. I thought the explanation, the rationale were excellent. That made sense to me.
Sounds like a great course. All these courses sound great, but I'll let you get to them.
I'm kind of hoping, I know Jim does some of the programming with C++, so I think that, kind of hoping that, he has students that might want to come my way and, vice versa.
Right.
So maybe we kind of get some.
But remember, you're talking to a strong supporter of this kind of material, this kind of program that moves kind of into the... I mean, you've gotten so close to the science areas so many times and so in the technology piece. And then, it always seems like you're stuck in what's called tech, and it really isn't. It's technology and engineering, and it's the whole new world for kids. So it's the careers and the salaries.
It's a matter of interest to many of these new courses. I presume some of them meet the requirements for math, science, English, and so forth.
Yes.
I was wondering that too, so they would, because that's built into the law. So.
This course wouldn't be crosswalk for
Okay.
math or science at this point, but the math and the English both are both towards college.
And might this be at some point, depending on how, once it's developed and gets running? I mean, this type
You
of...
can put in a request for that, yes.
Okay.
Get it approved and look at that if it meets certain criteria.
And I'm really supporting the microcontrolling course because there are any Arduinos around, I think they ought to be controlled.
I'm just kind of sort of surprised there was no prerequisites for the course, though.
The packages, the first semester, it's kind of my hopes that it gets expanded down the line, but there's a lot of products out there that use the Arduino that keeps the basic electronics right down to what is an LED and how does an LED work, along with generic code that you can take, literally copy and paste code into the program to program and get it to work. So you can kind of use this course as a foundation for learning basic electronics and basic electronic components with little knowledge of electronics. So I mean that's kind of going to be the structure. Is
that it'll be approached that way because you don't necessarily know what you're going to get for a student. But even if you do get a student that does have some electronics experience, because of the amount of material that's out there, you can send them off into their own direction where they could take writing a program to the next level and go crazy on it, add a multitude of different electronic components, and just differentiate based on that. So, I don't feel that there's a need for a prerequisite for it because I think that can just get covered in the introduction. And for anyone who does have some experience, I think I could shoot off in a different way with them, and they can kind of learn on their own, so to speak, to some degree.
Okay. And even as far as grade prerequisite, like, is this going to be geared
Junior,
towards
senior.
junior, senior?
Yeah.
Okay, so there will be. Okay.
And a lot of students, I don't really anticipate a lot of students to take this type of course unless they've either taken electronics class or possibly taken some type of a course in computer science and come down from that area.
And I guess that's why I asked the question of prerequisite. Maybe you put that prerequisite out there that they have to take those courses prior to.
The only possibility that I could see where maybe you get someone that hasn't come from my area or any of their gyms is maybe some type of an art type student that has seen some type of art collections that involve some mechanical type stuff to it, where they might come down to me and somehow use what we teach to incorporate it in their art. So.
Other comments, questions? Okay, thanks.
Okay, next we'll go to the game development course. And this is part of our computer science offering, and it's game development 2. Computer science, as you know, is a very strong area in terms of job opportunities and so on. And Jim's done a very good job over the years of really trying to keep up with what's going on, whether it's at the Madison College area or just with computer science in general. And so he's brought in courses or moved courses out based on kids' interest and where he sees the field going. Right now there seems to be considerable interest in this area, and our enrollment in the one program has been good, and Jim feels like there's enough interest with kids to go to the next level. We might be able to get enrollment and make a class like this flow. Obviously focuses a lot on the primary thing here is game development, but you're also teaching a lot of good basic skills with that. This would be a semester course for a half credit as well.
Isn't there major game manufacturers in Madison?
Raven Software.
Yeah.
There's a couple other smaller ones that are coming out of Middleton.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, I don't remember the name of them. But I know Raven Software is very large, and they've been doing very well. And I've actually requested them to come in a couple times.
Oh, cool.
So I take it there was a game development 1.
Game Development 1 was originally titled Web Graphics,
Okay.
and this was 8 years ago, and that was when Flash animation was very large and popular, and over the time, Flash has gone away from the animation aspect of it because of some major influences with like Apple and all that. So what they did is, I found that kids weren't actually wanting to take the course as much, and they liked the graphics and all that, and so we incorporated all into the programming, and gaming was huge, and so I started kind of like pulling stuff in for more games, and before you know it, it just kind of became a gaming class, and the title was not bringing the kids in anymore, so we changed it to game development, and we switched it over officially last year, and in doing so, the curriculum has just morphed along the way, and we had 2 full sections run last year, pretty much with 30 in one class and 26 in the other. And this year we had another full section running the second semester coming up. And so based on that demand, the kids want it. And I tried to get one in at the end of last year for this current school year. The timing was, I didn't realize it was going to be that big. And kids love it.
I was in Pong, will that be part of it?
Jeff wants to take this class.
Yeah.
Susan and I just did one more question. Again, I just think this is great, and I think the explanation is great. And again, we need a full computer science technology curriculum, and we need to set this up so kids can be moving forward in this arena. My only question is about Game Development 1 and Game Development 2. When I'm applying to Yale, and this is a class that could be very influential in the development of a kid who's going to move forward in that area, are these schools that these kids may go on to, or work they may do, going to be able to understand what they were doing in this course with this title. So I'm just saying, think about it. I'm not saying change it. I want you to attract the kids. On the other hand, I've got to be able to, on a governance position, be able to communicate this incredible stuff about computer programming and computer science, and that's where you are and what you're developing in here with the title.
If you look at like UW Stout, they're a very large proponent of game development in the area for school districts.
Okay.
They have basic level courses. I use the same software they do. If you go look at Duke, I was Googling for curriculum just for resources. Duke University teaches Alice 2.3, which is pretty much like 4 years out from now, like it was 4 years ago. They still use that curriculum. I switched to Alice 3.1 in my CS1 class. Now, granted, we don't go into the same depth that they do in a semester course, but at least the kids are getting experience. I have a kid that just graduated last year that's over at ITT Tech. No, wait, no, I'm sorry. Let me take it back. Madison Media Institute, and he's going into game development there. And right now, he has basically been asked not to answer any more questions.
I was going to say, I think the people in computer science understand.
Well, again, that was my question.
And then labeling as game development.
Will they understand that title, and will different levels understand? And you're saying yes, which is fine.
If you look at the title, and if they have any questions, they ask the kid about what they've learned. I'm sure the kids can rattle off a couple things, and the person that will talk to them will understand exactly where they're at.
And you write those recommendations? And
yes, I will.
Right.
That'd be great.
Okay, media and literacy, media literacy and composition.
I'm just going to move because if you have questions, I don't like to be sitting behind all these people.
This is our traditional journalism course, if you will, has just not had enough interest in kids to run the last few years, and we've run it for a while every other year. And we know that's an important skill for kids, but there's just been less interest in that kind of media. And so in trying to bring more kids to that, Kelly is recommending this course, which would, in addition to some of the traditional journalism kind of skills, would focus more on social media kind of things that we see now happening, and give kids an opportunity to learn reading, writing, and good English skills through that, in hopes that we would draw more students in by upgrading this. This would be a senior elective for kids and one semester course.
Yeah, I think this also looks like a great course, and I love the skills that are embedded in here. I mean, the important critical thinking skills. I think it's a great way to get at it. Very, very appropriate and timely. Sounds so a great idea.
So is the journalism course lost interest because journalism's dead?
I don't think journalism's dead. I think that students interact with journalism whether they
in a different, and it's more like this, really.
Yeah, really, right.
Yeah,
So
right.
you're all on your iPads, and some of you might not actually have open what you're supposed to. But no,
We did that on
helping kids
purpose.
understand how to navigate the landscape of just because you saw it on Facebook and you've posted it, like, oh, and it's got to be real. Helping kids understand what's real and what's not,
right.
Where information comes from, what true journalism should look like, what it doesn't look like. There's like a whole website devoted to people who think the Onion stories are real. No. So, helping kids kind of navigate that. We have a lot of conversations about that, as well as we've had some new teachers in our English department, and they talked a little bit about their own coming from different schools where they had courses like this, where really looked at all these different aspects of media as well. So Modern Family is a great television show, but what kind of stereotypes does it reinforce about families who are gay? That have gay parents, I'm sorry. So I think it's very interesting to kind of have some of those conversations and have students kind of examine and look at media, all these different components of media a little more critically, instead of taking things at face value. And how does that reflect? One of the, some of this came out of, I did that study with Deidre Gorman last summer, where we looked at these different beyond diversity kind of things and being culturally responsive. And one of the things that comes out of that was taking a look at like all these Disney princesses
So that's where some of this was born out of, was from some of that study and conversation, that this would be a great way to kind of hit some of those pieces that we can get before. So.
I guess I've been more like, when I was a kid playing pong, who doesn't want to be Woodward and Bernstein? Like now, there's nobody that wants to be Chris Rickey. So.
Well, and I've showed all the president's men in the journalism class, and the kids who are truly think that's cool. It's very hard for kids who don't understand that the amount of time and work that goes into investigative reporting. And I got a chance to see Woodward came to like one of our conventions or something, and I saw him speak, and he talked about how the problem with it is it's all about being first, not being right. And so one of the things that they talk about, like Columbine, there's a great book about, I can't think of the author's name, but that some schools are studying across the country to look at, here's all the stuff that was reported after Columbine happened, but then here's the real story, and there are a lot of people that still live in this myth of all these things that were created that weren't real. And it was really interesting that take any major news event and say, here's what happened, and here's the reality, and that's a really great learning experience for students. I don't know if I can do it all in a semester, but I guess.
Sounds ambitious. Any other questions?
Sounds good.
Good, yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
The fourth course is the non-AP calculus course, and it'll be a full year course for full credit. When I started here 10 years ago, we did offer the AP Calc, and Maury was doing most of the teaching of it, and we had, at that time, we're doing some distance learning with it, and we always had a very solid math program. For whatever reason, our enrollment at that upper level was pretty low. I know one year, I think we only had one of our own students in that AP, and then Maury was working with a variety of other kids. And, between some curriculum, I think, changes, and some credit to the lower levels and bringing kids to a higher level, and I think our high school staff responding. Over the last 4, 5, 6 years, we've built up a program now where we're looking at 2 full sections of Calculus AP, AB, and then typically 1 full section of VC every year the last 3 or 4 years. Our numbers have become very strong. To their credit, being mathematicians, they continue to analyze things and look at data, and as you notice, one of the things they put in this table is that a number of our students who are coming into the AP level are either not staying in there because they're finding it with the AP, as you know, you have to stay on track and compare kids to AP tests. You don't have, as a teacher, much control over the pacing. You have to get through that information. And between students who have floundered and not been able to stay, and those who've chosen not to take the test, or those who haven't been what we typically call successful 3, 4, 5 in that test, there's a population of students that they feel like we could serve better, who, if they had an opportunity to take a regular calculus class that wasn't AP, that we could pace at a level that was a little bit slower for them, maybe not cover quite as much, but give them still a good background. They'd come through pre-calc, that we have a population we could serve better, and it would probably typically reduce our, we'd pull some kids out of the AP probably, and we'd maybe pick up some kids who either chose not to take it, who were dropped, and we think there's a critical mass that we at least have 1 section that we would serve. So I don't know if I articulated that very well, but that, I think, is where the proposal's coming from, and like I say, math, they're very good at looking at their numbers and just making sure, even though our number of kids enrolled is very good, they're always looking for ways to make sure we're meeting everybody's needs.
Makes a lot of sense to me. Susan?
I just so strongly support this course. I just cannot tell you how strongly I support this course. Again, having been involved in the evolution of the advanced kind of middle school math programming, it offers kids another choice. And they can still go in. So our second son just wasn't going to do the calculus because he felt that he wouldn't be successful at the AP piece. This class would have been so perfect for him. And again, he was an econ major. So I think it's going to give kids a very strong another choice. You're still going to fill those AP classes because you're good teachers and you help the kids get to where they need to be by the time they're juniors and seniors. But I think this is a great another choice. Just great.
the students taking this class, even though they're not taking the AP class, they could still take the, if they wanted to, they could still take the AP calculus test.
Yes, yep. And if we had a student take this class as a junior, they still would be able to take AP
Their
Calculus
senior year.
BC
Yep.
and take that test at the end of their senior year. And the nice thing about the AP Calc BC test is they get an A, B, and a BC subscore. So they would still have the opportunity to potentially test out of 2 semesters of calculus.
Wow.
Nice.
This calculus.
Any other
Great choices. It's just exactly like the choices you're building into science right now. There are so many good choices
I was
for
trying
kids
to
with different
briefly
learning.
on this one. As no, yeah, and I have taught AP calculus, and I'll be honest. When I initially heard the proposal, my first thought is, boy, we don't want to be lowering our standards. But when I heard, the rationale read, and I'm totally on board as well. I think it makes perfect sense, and clearly our teachers want the same thing: is to push students, and as you described, there's going to be an opportunity for more students. So I'm also fully in support of this course.
other questions? Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. All right.
Thanks a lot.
Then, yeah, thanks very much.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you very much
those-
for coming
I
today.
appreciate how well developed all those proposals were too. The rationales very clearly spelled out. Very nice. All right, next we have the PMA budget forecast and set up.
Should we take a break? That'd be nice.
Do you want to take a short break? Yeah, we'll take a short break while you guys set up. Okay. Taking a few minutes while they set up. We had a request for a short break.
Where that's going to happen.
It's a whole different meeting than to sit next to you.
I know that.
I meant that in the best way. Yes, I meant that in the best way.
Well, there you go. Out there.
You were able to get something done?
Yeah, I took care of a couple of emails that I had to send. So,
PMA budget forecast, and we have Bob Borsch here from, is that how you say your name? Borsch, okay. From PMA to run through it with us.
Yes, thank you for having me tonight. And what I'm going to do is just give you a little background. You may have seen something similar last year, but just so you're aware of what's going on. PMA is the firm I work for. I was business official for 31 years prior to that, and then moved over to help districts of all sizes all over the state. So the area that I work with in PMA is financial planning program, and it's, as you will see, it's a very robust Excel-driven spreadsheet program. So let's go into what is the financial planning program. Well, we consider it a highly interactive 5-year financial planning process that reviews the previous 5 years, because we have all of your history we downloaded from the Department of Public Instruction. We have your current budget loaded into the model, and it uses that as the basis for future years with assumptions that are placed into the model. It generates 5 years of financial projections. You've all received 8 pages of handouts that show you what those are, and I'll be going through what I provided to you tonight. And it allows ongoing scenario analysis. In other words, we know that we're at a snapshot in time where you're able to make certain assumptions at this point in time. But as things change, some of your assumptions may change. And so we have the ability to go into the model and make assumption changes to see what ifs, what's going to happen if something changes. I'll use health insurance for an example. We have a 7% increase is currently in the model. Now, if Jared should work with your provider and determine that actuarially you don't have to have 7%, then we can go into the model, change it, provide you with new reports that will have accurate number then in that regard. So what are the applications? Well, the biggest thing is to develop the 5-year budget plan, which is what I'm going to be presenting tonight. It allows you to identify trends and analysis. In other words, with the what ifs, it's what if we did this, what would be the analysis trends that we would see. Some boards use it for setting fiscal policies. There's scenario analysis where you can do what ifs and look at 3 different reports, perhaps. Districts have used it when they're increasing energy efficiency. They use it if they're looking at having referenda to say, okay, if we have a operating referendum, or if we have a building referendum and we're going to have to borrow money, what is that going to do to all of the moving parts within your budget? Of course, salary negotiations, that used to, I would say, was a more important component than it is now, in the fact that everybody had their structured salary schedule, and we're seeing that go away. Referendum cost reduction planning, and allows data-driven decision making. So what are the services? Well, there's data collection. We collect the data, like I say, much of it comes from DPI, and some of it has to come from you, where you have to provide information. There's analysis and verification of what's in the program, and certainly working with Jared on once I develop the base, then we go back and forth and finalize things before it comes to you. So we review the assumptions with the administration, and tonight we're doing the presentation of the base model. And then as time goes on, we can do scenario analysis and reporting. And certainly we are available to do presentations as we're doing tonight, you as a board. And quite frankly, other stakeholder groups. I was up at Southern Door County School District on Monday night. They were doing the state of the district. Part of the state of the district report was what's the financial position of the district, and so I was there as their consultant to show the community and to explain to the community what was going on with their financial forecast. And as I say, it allows for review and updates. So what are the data elements? Well, as I say, we start out with your annual reports and your current budget. We get a detailed history, and what we allow is to either use your projections or we have methodologies built in that can generate projections. We look at your student-teacher staff ratios and use that in projecting then what your staffing needs are out the next 5 years as your enrollment either increases or decreases. As I mentioned, the salary schedule benefits certainly, such as health insurance, and the increases that's going to occur over the years and how that affects things. We ask for what your projections are for equalized valuation, because of course that has an effect on both your property taxes, also has an effect on aid. Revenue limit and general state aid calculations. One of the things that we have as an advantage this year is that we are going into the second year of biennium next year. So we already know what the parameters are for the revenue limit and general state aid calculations. It's making assumptions for the next 4 years that's important as part of the model building. And the aid and revenue limit variables and assumptions. And so we have results. How do we interpret it? We always say that the first year and the second year, you have a fairly high confidence in what the model is showing you. The third, fourth, and fifth year, you're less confident because it's farther out. Right now, like I say, with 14 and 15, we know what those state parameters are. We do have the unknowns starting in 15, 16. What's the legislators, what's the governor going to propose, what actions are they going to take that we have to reflect in the model. And I'll just go back 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when everybody expected to see some sort of increase in the revenue cap. We had it in all of our models. The governor comes out with a negative amount for revenue cap. We immediately went in and adjusted all the models for our clients so they could see what's going to happen. And so in summary, we feel that having the model available to you gives you additional transparency. It's proactive. It allows you to look ahead and take actions that's going to assist you. It gives you an insightful view into the future, and it hopefully gives you an increased level of understanding. And again, back to those data-driven decisions. So with that, I'm going to end this. And there is the first page of what you were provided. And this is our general fund. Whoops, let me go back one. This is our base forecast. Again, we call it that because it's the start of the process. It's the 30,000-foot level overview where we're looking at the revenue for the general fund and the expenditures for the general fund. And then, of course, comparing the two to show you a surplus or deficit that would occur in any given year, and then what kind of change would that ensue for the fund balance. So as we look at this, you see that we break out our revenues in local, state, federal, and other sources. We break out the expenditures into salary and benefits and other objects. We can go then to the next couple of pages where it shows more clearly what these outcomes are. So I'm going to go right to the next page, the 10R, or revenue analysis. A couple of things you'll notice. One is this categorical aid dollar amount going up next year significantly, 62% increase. The reason for that is, as you know, there was a new categorical aid that was introduced a year ago, which is a per pupil categorical aid. It was at $50 last year. It's at $75 this year. When the legislators and the governor passed the budget, next year shows a $150 per pupil categorical aid. And so this large increase that you see here is as a result of that $150 per pupil amount being available to you. And fortunately, the amount is some certain amount. In other words, it's guaranteed. You're going to get it. Also, the legislature currently says, and every year thereafter, $150. So when we put together the revenue scenario, and I talked with Jared and said, well, what do you think? Are they going to follow that, what was passed in the last session? Or are they going to come back and say, oh, sorry, as they have done before in certain other areas, and change it? But right now, we're showing it just reflecting that $150. Your equalization aid, you're in a position financially how you fit into the aid calculations where you're actually seeing an increase each year, in part because of your enrollment changes. That certainly can contribute to it. In many other districts that I work with, we see as much as a 15% decrease because their property values are going up and their enrollment's going down, and it just really does great damage to them. But you're in a position where you're adding to it, and the result is that you show, as we go up to the very top, in the way of taxes, a fairly small increase each year, reflective of the fact that equalization aid plus taxes is your revenue capacity, which is part of the calculations that are done in the model. And so when you add those two together, it allows for a very small property tax increase, particularly next year. This other state revenue, you're probably wondering, well, why is that changing? And that is because of the reflection of the, okay, I looked at it a second, what was it? The computer aid. That's it, computer aid. Computer aid is, again, a component of the revenue cap calculation, and equalization aid and the computer aid are the two components of state dollars that come into revenue cap. Because the amount of value of your computers going down.
CDA
Yes.
did a study, did a TIF study in Monona, and it's a nice summary of all of them and when they're coming due and that kind of thing.
You cross-reference that to my spreadsheet.
Right, that's right. Well, yeah.
Other questions?
Well, I've got a couple more. The benefit cost in there based on some assumptions? They are, I know, but
Yes. For sure.
the status quo or something else?
Our benefits assumptions are at 7% for health insurance and 5% for dental insurance, and they're based at the current level that we currently offer. I did not make any changes because obviously we don't know what that's going to look like, and one of the positive points of hiring a director of HR is that will be one of their responsibility is to go out and do those comparables and make the recommendations to Dan, and we'll be able to cost those out and really be able to find ways that, you know, is 5% really what we should be looking at is our dental program, a good program that we can that can be a help assist us in recruiting and retaining quality staff.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you.
And we'll be using this as we move along in the budget process.
All right, and then we will move on to the budget timeline.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.